Hello students, today's dermatology theory class is about acne. At the end of this class, you should be able to answer about the pathogenesis of acne, the different types of acne, the grading of acne, and the treatment of acne, and the various complications of acne. Acne is one of the commonest skin conditions seen. It affects more than 90% of people at some point in their life. It can be easily diagnosed. Though it is not fatal, acne may affect mental and social well-being. There are multiple therapeutic options available, but it requires skill to treat. The successful management of a acne patient requires a tailor-made treatment for that particular patient. Acne is a chronic self-limiting inflammatory disease of the pilosebaceous unit, presenting with seborrhea and pleomorphic lesions like comedones, papules, pustules, and in severe cases, nodules and cysts. Scarring is very common in acne. Acne is a disease of adolescence. The age of onset is around puberty. The peak incidence in women is around 14 to 17 years, and in men it is 16 to 19 years. It's much more common and more severe in men, and it is more common in urban boys. Genetic factors influence the susceptibility to develop acne. Now, moving on to the pathogenesis of acne, it all starts with the puberty and increased androgen secretion. This leads to increased sebum secretion, and there is altered keratinization within the sebaceous follicle. There is also colonization by follicular microbial flora, particularly by a bacteria called Propionibacterium acnes. And there can also be inflammation. Different factors like various immunological factors and environmental factors also play a role. First, let us see the altered keratinization within sebaceous follicle that is responsible for acne. There is increased production of follicular ductal keratinocyte, and there is also increased adhesion of this follicular ductal keratinocytes. This in turn leads to retention of this hyperproliferating ductal keratinocytes. All these lead to microcomedones. Microcomedones are not visible to the naked eye, they are too small. These are the initial lesions of acne. The next factor we will be seeing will be androgen activity. As I said before, the onset of puberty correlates with the spurt of hormones, and this correlates with onset of acne. There is an increase in androgen estrogen ratio, and androgen increases sebum secretion and sebaceous gland hyperplasia. The seborrhea can be a result of increased androgenic sex hormones of either gonadal origin or adrenal origin. There can also be a decreased sex hormone binding globulin. So because there is nothing to bind, the free hormone levels are increased, and this also increases the sebum production. There can also be an abnormal end organ response to normal level of hormones. That is the increased responsiveness of sebaceous glands to normal levels of androgens. All these can cause increased sebum production. Also, the sebum in acne patients show increased levels of squalene and wax esters and lower levels of linoleic acid in the sebum. And this leads to the previous point, that is the ductal hypercornification. The next factor is the quantity and quality of sebum secretion. Under the influence of androgens, there is an excessive quantity of sebum that is being secreted. This sebum is acnegenic, which means it can produce acne. The quality of sebum also changes, and this leads to the irritation of ductal keratinocytes. The other factor which is important in the pathogenesis of acne is colonization by follicular microbial flora. The various resident bacterial flora like Propionibacterium acnes, Propionibacterium granulosum, Pitrospora movale and Staphylococcus epidermidis are present. And in acne, there seems to be an increased count of Propionibacterium acnes. The resident flora secretes enzymes and pro-inflammatory cytokines. This results in the inflammation. They also release certain enzymes like lipases, and these lipases convert sebum into free fatty acids. This results in follicular irritation and keratinocyte hyperproliferation, which we already saw as a factor involved in acne. And these resident flora also release chemokines, which in turn cause inflammation. So thus this microbial flora play a major role in the production of acne. There are also immunological factors involved in the pathogens of acne. Inflammation always precedes microcomedone formation. Interleukin 1 initiates keratinocyte hyperproliferation, and the resident bacteria Propionibacterium acnes activates both classical and alternate complement pathways. This again leads to inflammation. There are a lot of environmental factors which can aggravate acne. One is the hot and humid climate, emotional stress, high glycemic load diet, especially if you eat chocolates and all. There can be hyperinsulinemia, which results in pre-insulin-like growth factor 1, and this leads to increased sebum and altered keratinization and excess gonadal androgens. Dairy products also contain insulin-like growth factor 1, and they also increase the endogenous production of IGF-1. So dairy products also may aggravate acne. The environmental factor that may be beneficial for acne is natural light. This picture shows the pathogenesis of acne in brief. The picture on the left shows a normal pilosebaceous follicle. You can see the hair follicle and also the sebaceous gland that is attached to it, and the normal bacterial flora on the surface of the skin. The picture at the center shows the pilosebaceous unit with the abnormal characterization of the hair follicle, and you can also see the sebaceous glands are large in size and excessive sebum production, and also the colonization of this pilosebaceous unit with this microbial flora that can be seen. The picture on the right shows the inflammatory changes that are occurring and the obstruction to this pilosebaceous unit. So this is in short about the pathogens of acne. Next, let's see different systems for classifying the grades of acne. The earliest published grading system was by Pillsbury. He has classified acne into various grades to facilitate the choice of treatment modalities. First is the grade 1 acne, which consists of comedones. They can be either open or closed comedones, and occasionally papules can be there. Grade 2 acne has comedones. In addition to comedones, there can be many papules and few pustules. Grade 3 acne, you have predominantly pustules and nodules and abscesses. Grade 4 is the most severe type of acne. It contains mainly cysts, abscesses and scars. This picture shows grade 1 acne. You can see plenty of open and closed comedones. I hope that you remember what a comedone is. A comedone is nothing but a plug of keratin and sebum which is seen in the dilated orifice of the pilosebaceous unit. It is called an open comedone when it is exposed, and this get oxidized and turn into black color. Its blackheads or open comedones. When this is not exposed, these are seen like small bumps on the skin, and these are called as whiteheads or closed comedones. This picture shows grade 2 acne. You can see many comedones and lot of papules and even few pustules. This is grade 2 acne. This picture shows grade 3 acne. In this type, there are few papules and nodules and deep-seated pustules. The most severe form of acne is this grade 4 acne. which is nothing but nodulocystic acne. This consists mainly of cysts, abscesses, and scars. The most dreaded complication of acne is scarring, which results as a consequence of abnormal resolution or wound healing following the inflammation. Acne may leave behind ice pick scars or rolling scars, boxcar scars, or hypertrophic scars. Ice pick scars are seen in most patients with grade 1 and grade 2 acne, while depressed or hypertrophic scars are seen in the nodulocystic type of acne. The other complication that can occur due to acne is hyperpigmentation. It usually occurs in patients with darker skin types, that is type 3 or type 4 Fitzpatrick skin type. And these hyperpigmented macules may persist following the resolution of inflammatory acne lesions for a long time. Next, we'll see the different variants of acne. The first will be drug-induced acne. It is also called as acneiform eruption. Then we can see acne excoriae, acne conglobata, acne fulminans, acne mechanica, occupational acne or chloracne, pyoderma facial, late onset acne, also known as endocrine acne, cosmetic acne or pomade acne, tropical acne, and gram-negative folliculitis. These are the different variants of acne. The first variant of acne is drug-induced acne. It is also called as acneiform eruption because even though the morphology looks like acne, it is not real acne. And drug-induced acne usually causes a monomorphic rash. That means all the lesions have a similar morphology, and there are no comedones in drug-induced acne. Usually we see only papules and pustules. Comedones are not present. What are the drugs which are implicated in drug-induced acne? Commonly what we see will be steroids. Both oral steroids, systemic steroids, and topical steroids can cause this. This we see day in and day out. And patients who are on ATT, like they take isoniazid and rifampicin, they also present with this acneiform eruption. Other drugs that can cause include halogens, androgens, lithium, phenytoin, and sometimes even this phototherapy with PUA that also can cause drug-induced acne. This picture clearly demonstrates the acneiform eruption. You can see plenty of monomorphic papules. This is due to steroid use. If you carefully observe the picture, you can also see another side effect of this steroid use. You can see hypertrichosis that is occurring in this patient. That is also a side effect of steroid. The next variant of acne which we'll be seeing is called as acne excoriae. It is predominantly seen in females who fiddle with and exacerbate even the smallest of lesions. So this is called as the acne excoriae. It's mainly patient induced. The next variant we will be seeing will be acne conglobata. It's a severe form of acne. It is most often seen in males. It is characterized by multiple inflammatory papules and tender nodules, which fuse to form multiple sinuses, and mutilating scars can be seen because of this acne conglobata. Chloracne is an eruption of multiple comedones, cysts, and pustules that may occur with overexposure to halogenated aromatic compounds, including chlorinated dioxins and dibenzofurans. Commonly, lesions are located on the cheeks, armpits, groin, and behind the ears. Chloracne is linked to toxic exposure to dioxins, including herbicides such as Agent Orange. Presence of chloracne is considered to be a clinical sign of dioxin exposure, and the severity follows a typical asymptomatic dose-response relationship curve. Because this could involve the other systemic organs, the patient needs to be evaluated for other systemic complications. The patient should be evaluated ophthalmologically, neurologically, liver function test should be done, and lipoprotein abnormalities also should be evaluated. So chloracne, even though it just resembles acne, it could be a very severe condition. It needs to be evaluated properly. Even though acne is a self-limiting benign condition, the psychosocial impact it has on individuals is immense. So this is the most important aspect of acne and its management. Acne can lead to increased anger and anxiety. It can also lead to social embarrassment, especially when this occurs during teenage, when the social interactions are part and parcel of their daily life. It can lead to this embarrassment, and also it leads to lack of self-confidence and depression. Sometimes it can also lead to dysmorphophobia, that is the false perception of their physical appearance. The patient's acne might be very mild, but the patient's symptoms are out of proportion to the physical signs. This is called as dysmorphophobia. And all this stress can again aggravate the existing acne. So acne leads to stress and stress aggravates acne. So this is a vicious cycle that needs to be taken care of. Next, we'll see an interesting association between polycystic ovary syndrome and acne. As all of us know, polycystic ovary syndrome is an androgen excess condition, and it also has insulin resistance along with it. So this androgen excess can lead to persistent and severe acne in women, and sometimes acne of late onset in females. So women beyond 35 years can develop acne, and that could be due to polycystic ovary. So other associated features that could be there in the patients with polycystic ovary syndrome could be hirsutism, acanthosis nigricans, and female pattern hair loss. Both this hirsutism and female pattern hair loss is due to androgen excess, and acanthosis nigricans, as all of you know, is due to insulin resistance. And the key etiological feature of PCOS are increased androgen secretion and insulin resistance that we already saw. So the treatment option for this is slightly different from treating other types of acne. This needs hormonal therapy along with lifestyle modifications. Because of insulin resistance, there may be weight gain. So weight reduction is recommended, and hormone therapy is also recommended for these patients. In the beginning of the class, we saw that acne occurs mainly in adolescents, but sometimes acne can occur in adults also. So this is called as adult acne. Acne that occurs above 25 years of age is called as adult acne. It is of two types. One is acne can persist from adolescence, or acne can appear for the first time after 25 years of age. These are the two types of adult acne. And this adult acne can last up to the sixth decade of life. In adult acne, familial cases are very common, and these acne are most likely induced by hormonal causes, or sometimes it can be due to drugs also. The common hormonal causes in the last slide we saw polycystic ovary syndrome, that is one of the common things, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, and Cushing syndrome. These are the common causes of adult acne. Now that we have seen about the different types of acne and grades of acne, it's time to see about the differential diagnosis for acne. The commonest condition which most often we confuse with acne is called as rosacea. Actually, rosacea had a name called as acne rosacea before. Nowadays, we do not call it like that. We all just call it as rosacea. Rosacea occurs in older people. This lacks comedones, nodules, and cysts or scarring. Rosacea patients have usually flushing of their face, and the telangiectasias are also seen. These are the characters of rosacea. The other common differential diagnosis for acne will be Pitrosporum folliculitis. All of you know that Pitrosporum is an yeast that can cause folliculitis. These lesions can be pruritic, and they are seen as ill-defined blocks with scattered papules and pustules on the upper trunk. The third differential diagnosis is pseudofolliculitis. Pseudofolliculitis, they present as erythematous papules on the beard area due to the ingrowth of the closely shaved hair. The closely shaved hair is pointed projection which goes inside and produces the tissue reaction. The other differential diagnosis would be milia. Milia are small papules that are commonly seen in the infraorbital region. They contain keratin inside. They appear white in color. And the plain warts also may resemble acne. Rainwaves are usually occur as multiple smooth, flat, round, or polygonal skin-colored papules on the face, doors of the hands, and shins. And the other differential diagnosis would be adenomosebaceum of tuberous sclerosis. They occur as reddish-brown, dome-shaped papules associated with telangiectasia in a symmetric butterfly distribution over the nose, nasolabial folds, and cheeks. Other features of tuberous sclerosis, like ash-leaf macules and shagreen patch, are also seen. The trio, that is the epilepsy mental retardation, can also be seen along with adenomosebaceum. As all of you know, this disease, tuberous sclerosis, is also called as Von-Wills disease. The scarring of acne can be mistaken for acne keloidalis, varioliform atrophy, and porphyria cutanea tarda. This is the picture of a rosacea patient. You can see plenty of erythematous papulopustules occurring in the center part of the face cheeks. There are no comedones, nodules, or cysts. So this is very classical of rosacea. Sometimes flushing and telangiectasia can be seen. This is a picture of Pityrosporum folliculitis. Pruritic, ill-defined papules and plaques are seen in the upper trunk. Now that we've seen the different types of acne, various grades of acne, the other differential diagnosis for acne, we move on to the management. Usually, acne does not require many investigations. We manage the patient based on our clinical diagnosis. Except in the circumstances wherein other systemic causes like polycystic ovary syndrome can be there, where we might need some hormonal investigations. Sometimes to monitor the therapy, we may need some investigations. Otherwise, we manage the patient based on our clinical assessment. So first, acne assessment is very important. First and foremost, the severity of the acne should be assessed to decide on the treatment mode and for monitoring the response to the treatment. And this includes the extent of the inflammatory and comedonal lesions, presence of scarring, the psychological effects due to acne, and the degree of success or failure with the previous treatment. And these goals of treatment should be discussed with the patient, and the patient expectation also should be noted on. The appropriate patient expectation would be little improvement after 1 month of therapy, and at the end of 2 months there can be 20% improvement only, and 60% improvement at the end of 6 months, and at 8 months there can be 80% improvement. So this should be told to the patient that the improvement will be a very gradual one. They should not expect any magic. So based on this, the choice of therapy should be made. And always remember to take the drug history, because sometimes acne can be caused by drugs. We all know that. So before proceeding on to managing acne, take drug history properly. Treatment of acne includes topical therapy, systemic therapy, a combination of both these therapies, and sometimes physical therapies, physical modalities of therapies, and sometimes even minor surgeries for acne scars. So first let us see about various topical agents that are available to us to manage acne. The first group of drugs are topical antibiotics. Topical antibiotics such as erythromycin, clindamycin, and clarithromycin are available to manage acne. The next drug that is available is benzoyl peroxide. It is available in a concentration from 2.5% to 10%. It is available as a gel, cream, lotion, sometimes even as a face wash. Benzoyl peroxide is a comedolytic. There is no effect on the sebum production. And as you know, topical antibiotics obviously act on the microbes, mainly the Propionibacterium acnes. Azelaic acid is a drug which is effective, and this is one drug which is safe during pregnancy. Whereas the other group of drugs that are topical retinoids that are available, they are teratogenic and should not be used during pregnancy. Even topical agents are not advised during pregnancy. They are retinoic acid, that is vitamin A derivatives, and retinoic acid is available, and its derivatives such as tazarotene and adapalene are also available for treatment as gels. Topical dapsone has also been found to be effective in the treatment of acne. Next, moving on to the oral therapy. Usually it's used in moderate to severe acne, and the commonly used oral therapy agents are erythromycin. Erythromycin is given at a dose of 500 milligrams 4 times daily. Azithromycin can also be used, but it is used in a pulse dosing. That is, it is used at a dose of 500 milligrams per day for 3 consecutive days in a week. That constitutes a pulse. So this pulse can be given for few weeks. Tetracycline in a dose of 1 gram per day can be given, and doxycycline 100 milligrams per day can be tried. Minocycline is slightly expensive. It can be tried at a dose of 50 to 100 milligrams daily. Trimethoprim and dapsone have also been tried. Dapsone at a dose of 100 to 200 milligrams have been tried. And oral therapy should be given in combination with topical therapy for a minimum of 6 months. And if there is no improvement after 2 to 3 months, alternative therapy should be sought after. The antibiotic therapy may be associated with the following side effects. Doxycycline can produce onycholysis, esophagitis with ulceration, fixed drug eruptions, and photosensitivity. Minocycline can produce benign intracranial hypertension and papilledema, blue-black pigmentation of the nails, and rarely hypersensitivity reactions. The macrolide group of erythromycin and azithromycin can cause gastritis and diarrhea. Trimethoprim can cause severe drug reaction, especially when given in the form of co-trimazole, and dapsone can produce hemolytic anemia and life-threatening illness called dapsone syndrome. Next, let us see about hormonal therapy. Hormonal therapy may be tried when the standard antibiotic regimens are failed, and concomitant menstrual cycle control or contraception is also required, and oral isotretinoin therapy is inappropriate or not available. So the commonly used anti-androgens are cyproterone acetate. It is used at a dose of 50 to 100 milligrams per day, and other oral contraceptives which have ethinyl estradiol 35 micrograms along with 2 milligrams of cyproterone acetate can also be tried. Other combinations including levonorgestrel 100 microgram plus ethinyl estradiol 20 micrograms can be tried. The other regimens are prednisolone plus estrogen, spironolactone, and anti-androgens can be tried. There is a novel progesterone derived from spironolactone. It is called as drospirenone. That also can be tried as a hormonal therapy for acne. Oral contraceptives containing androgenic progesterone such as norethistyrone must be avoided. Hormonal therapy has its own set of side effects including weight gain, menstrual irregularity, fluid retention, melasma, hypertension, thrombophlebitis, and sometimes serious side effects like pulmonary embolism. So all these things should be explained to the patient before starting on hormonal therapy. Moving on to isotretinoin, which is a vitamin A derivative. Isotretinoin is 13-cis retinoic acid. Isotretinoin can be considered as a boon for severe cases and those patients who are not responding to oral antibiotic therapy. The mechanism of isotretinoin include the following. 1. It decreases the size of the sebaceous glands. 2. There is 80% reduction in the sebum production. Third, it alters the composition of sebum. And fourth, it reduces comedogenesis. And fifth, it lowers the Propionibacterium acnes concentration and has anti-inflammatory activity. So if you see, isotretinoin is one drug which acts on many parts of the pathogenesis of acne. So that's why it is very effective in severe acne. Isotretinoin is indicated when there is nodulocystic or severe acne, when there is pyoderma facial, acne recalcitrant to routine treatment, when there is excessive seborrhea, when there is associated depression or dysmorphophobia, and severe acne like acne conglobata and other unusual variants of acne are there. And to prevent scarring also, isotretinoin can be used when there is severe acne. The dosing of isotretinoin varies greatly. It can range from 0.1 milligram per kg body weight per day to 2 milligram per kg body weight per day. and ideally it is given after meals. The ideal dose would be 1 milligram per kg per day. One thing you should remember is the total cumulative dose of isotretinoin should not go beyond 120 to 150 milligrams per kg body weight. Even though it is a very good drug to control even severe acne, it has lot of side effects. The main side effect we should always remember is the teratogenic potential of this drug. So it should be used very cautiously in women of reproductive age group. So there are a lot of formalities, including a form that has to be filled, and the patient need to use contraception while using isotretinoin. All those things are there. So teratogenicity one should always remember. The common side effects which we come across in patients who take isotretinoin will be mucocutaneous side effects. They will complain of lip dryness and even dryness of eyes. Isotretinoin can also increase the serum lipids, so the lipid profile can be altered. So we usually do lipid profile before starting isotretinoin and try to avoid if there is an elevation of serum lipids. And being a vitamin A derivative, it can cause pseudotumor cerebri and optic neuritis, depression, and mood swing. Sometimes it can also cause arthritis and myalgia. Rarely it can cause acne flares, paradoxically. Next, we'll see about the physical modalities of therapy. Some people may require physical modalities for better, faster treatment and to minimize scarring. The various physical modalities of therapy include comedone expression, superficial electrocautery, and aspiration of cystic lesions. And once they are aspirated, they can be injected with intralesional steroids like triamcinolone acetonide, 10 mg per ml, up to 0.25 ml can be injected in each cyst. Cryotherapy can also be tried, and alpha hydroxy acids or salicylic acid pills can also be tried as physical modalities of therapy. Now we'll have a look at the newer options that are available now. Laser and lights with photodynamic therapies are new entrant in acne therapy. Though they are not curative, they have excellent additive properties to the existing therapies. Photodynamic therapy using blue-red light can be used. Low fluence pulse dye laser can also be used. Dermabrasion or carbon dioxide laser abrasion, they can be used for treating ice-pick scars. Erbium YAG laser can be used to treat atrophic or hypertrophic scars. And small surgical procedures like punch grafting and punch floats can be used to elevate the depressed scars. And new anti-inflammatory agents such as lipoxygenase inhibitors can also be tried. Now that we know the various treatment options that are available to us, now we need to carefully choose the treatment that is right for the particular patient. So how to select the treatment modality? If there is mild acne, that is only comedones present, we can use benzoyl peroxide, azelaic acid topically, and the patient can also use salicylic acid in cleanser or face wash in addition to this. Mild to moderate involvement, that is presence of comedones and few papules and pustules, it can be managed using topical benzoyl peroxide and topical retinoids, and topical antibacterial agents can be used for the inflammatory lesions. Topical antibacterial agents like topical clindamycin and clarithromycin can be tried. The acne is moderate or severe, which means there are many inflammatory papules, pustules, and or scarring. Oral antibiotics are indicated. And if this do not respond to the oral antibiotics, one should consider isotretinoin therapy or hormonal therapy if PCOS or other hormonal imbalances are considered. For cystic acne, there can be more than two nodules, cysts, abscesses, and sometimes there can even be bridging scars. First, we should aspirate the cyst, whatever pus is there that has to be aspirated. How that has been aspirated, intralesional steroids, that is triamcinolone acetonide 10 mg per ml can be injected. Systemic antibiotics also can be started. Other drugs that can be used are dapsone, hormonal therapy, or isotretinoin. Adjuvant therapy includes comedone expression, salicylic acid peels, and acne surgery for the various scars. In short, grade 1 acne may be treated with only topical therapy. Moderate to severe acne has to be treated with oral antibiotics, and one should keep in mind that we have to avoid monotherapy and dissimilar antibiotics. Combination of antibiotics with topical retinoids improves efficacy, and with benzoyl peroxide decreases resistance. The duration of treatment, one should remember, is 4 to 6 months. It is not a short-term treatment, 4 to 6 months therapy, and any treatment should be continued for at least 6 weeks. And also, hormonal therapy is used for patients with moderate acne who also need contraception, or those who need hormonal therapy to regulate hormonal irregularities. Compliance should be stressed upon, and patients should be educated about the potential side effects. Sometimes there can be poor response to therapy. It could be due to poor compliance and inadequate instructions, and it could be due to the side effects of the various drugs we use. And rarely there can be resistance of Propionibacterium acnes to the drugs we use, and sometimes the dosage can be inadequate, and it can also be due to folliculitis, that is due to Staphylococcus. And there is also one thing called as gram-negative folliculitis caused by Enterobacteria or Malassezia. So next few pictures will be before and after pictures. So this slide shows two pictures. The one on the left is before starting therapy, and the one on the right is after 2.5 months of therapy. Here the treatment options have been topical clindamycin gel in the morning and benzoyl peroxide 2.5% gel at night. You can see the marked improvement in the clinical condition. In this slide you can see a patient with severe acne. You can see many nodules, pustules, and this patient has been put on oral isotretinoin and topical clindamycin gel, and in 2 months period he has shown tremendous improvement. This patient also has severe acne, but she is a young lady who has been recently married, and so isotretinoin cannot be used because she wants to have a child. So in this patient they have used oral minocycline and topical benzoyl peroxide gel along with topical clindamycin, and in 3 months period you can see the drastic improvement of the condition. So that brings us to the end of today's class. So in this class we have seen the pathogenesis of acne, various types of acne, what are the exacerbating factors for acne, how to grade acne, and how to manage acne, what are the various topical treatment modalities available, systemic treatment modalities available, physical modalities that are available, the drugs that are commonly used and their side effects, and the complications of acne, including scarring and hyperpigmentation, and the psychosocial impact of acne. All this we have discussed in today's class. Thanks for your patient listening. Next we'll see some multiple choice questions. You can give the answers. Thank you. The first MCQ is acne is caused by option A Propionibacterium acnes, option B Malassezia purpura, option C Microsporum tonsurans, and option D Corynebacterium. It's a very easy question. All of you know the answer. The answer is option A Propionibacterium acnes. Malassezia can cause Microsporum folliculitis. Question number 2. Grade 1 acne is option A severe pustules and nodules, option B few pustules with scars, option C is few comedones mainly, and option D is pustules with comedones. As all of us know again from what we learned in today's class, grade 1 is mild acne. It has mainly comedones. So the option C is the right answer. Third question is also a easy question. Acne is basically a disease of option A, pilosebaceous gland, epidermis, eccrine gland, estrogens and progesterone imbalance. It is very simple. Option A, pilosebaceous gland is the right answer. Question 4. The side effects of minocycline include all except option A, benign intracranial hypertension, option B, pigmentation, option C, hemolytic anemia, and option D, photosensitivity. So we know that minocycline causes benign intracranial hypertension, it can cause pigmentation and also photosensitivity. So the option C, hemolytic anemia, is the correct answer here because minocycline does not cause hemolytic anemia, whereas dapsone can cause hemolytic anemia. The fifth MCQ. Which of the following is not a feature of steroidal acne? A. Absence of comedone. B. Absence of nodulocystic lesion. C. Polymorphous eruption. D. Occasional pruritus. So we all know in that steroidal acne or acneiform eruption is does not have comedones. They do not have nodulocystic lesion, and sometimes pruritus can be there. And the characteristic feature of the lesion is monomorphic eruption. So the correct answer here is option C, polymorphous eruption. So that is not a feature of steroidal acne. And the last slide for today is a photo quiz. The photo on the left shows a person with these lesions, acne lesions on the face. The question is grade the acne and outline the management options. So from the picture, what you can see, he is having multiple nodules. So this is a severe form of acne. So this is grade 4 acne. So for grade 4 acne, you can use antibiotics along with the topical agents. Being a male, we can also try isotretinoin, which works very well in this severe acne. The picture on the right shows another male, and you can see the face, the nose, and the malar regions. They are showing multiple papules and pustules. So, what is this? We have already seen this picture during the class. This is nothing but rosacea. So, this is a differential diagnosis for acne. So, these patients of rosacea can also have flushing and telangiectasias. So, this brings us to the end of today's class. Thanks for your patient listening.